Welcome to Tactical Talk. This is Zain. Today, the topic of our show is the North Korea problem. Today, the guest of our show is Jacob Wohl, a financer and political commentator, and also the editor-in-chief of the Washington Reporter. Welcome to our show, Jacob Wohl. This is Zain Khan. It's a pleasure to have you on Tactical Talk.
It's great to be back.
Jacob, let's get to the first question. After a decade of bad diplomatic relations with North Korea, the U.S. and South Korea and North Korea started peace talks. Did you perceive these peace talks as a positive step?
Well, it depends. I think that what you're seeing is that the Trump administration has shifted to a results-based approach rather than an approach where we just vaguely hold talks and set aspirational goals for denuclearization that aren't actually grounded in hard facts. In fact, my sources tell me the Trump administration conveyed to North Korea that they will, that they are to turn over 5 nukes before any summit takes place. Because the theory of the Trump administration is, if they're not willing to turn over 5 nukes, what makes us think they're ready to turn over 90? So what you're seeing now is a shift in policy where we're happy to talk, we're happy to give Kim Jong-un a great deal, but it's going to be a deal that is prefaced on denuclearization. There will be no deal where Kim Jong-un remains in charge of a nuclear state. It's just not going to happen.
Jacob, let's get to a very important question. Were these peace talks on the advice of Donald Trump?
Well, yes. I mean, he has set goals very early in his administration that, said basically Clinton failed, Bush failed, Obama failed. I will not fail. I'm going to solve this problem. And obviously when you have Kim Jong-un testing hydrogen bombs and launching rockets into space, it becomes incumbent upon the United States as the leader in the world to set that situation straight. You had North Korea threatening us with nuclear annihilation. You had them threatening to launch nuclear missiles. And President Trump responded with assurances, not threats, but assurances that if North Korea were to act foolishly in that regard, they would be met with military force like they can't even imagine. So it's a positive development. It's something that the Trump administration set out from the very beginning, and it's something that they're not going to forget about. This isn't going to be one of these Bill Clinton flops where you go out there, you have talks, you give him a basketball that's signed by Michael Jordan, and then you go home and you say, well, we tried. Trump will not stop until Kim Jong-un has given up his nuclear weapons. And he can do it the easy way or the hard way. The deal that is tentatively posed to Kim Jong-un is the best deal that he's ever going to get. There's not going to be a better offer. And with Kim Jong-un pulling out of the summit today, really what that is him saying, okay, I tried to see what I could get in exchange for nothing, and that's what it was. Kim Jong-un has not given up anything. He turned over hostages that he shouldn't have been keeping in the first place. He stopped launching missiles and testing bombs that he shouldn't have been testing in the first place under the Test Ban Treaty. And he destroyed a nuclear test site, which was falling apart anyway. He blew out the entrances to a couple of the tunnels, and this is according to CNN, who was there to witness this. So Kim Jong-un couldn't go to the table and give up everything at first. This is negotiations 101. He had to go to the table and make an offer that he knew was unlikely to be accepted first to see what he could get in exchange. And now he's found out what he gets in exchange for a crappy offer, which is what he presented. What he gets in exchange for doing nothing is he gets talks canceled, and Trump canceled the talks, which was a smart move, not let them do it and then make us look bad like we got snubbed and we got duped. You get canceled talks in exchange for that. You get more carriers in the region. You get more military drills. And you get stronger sanctions. In fact, my sources are telling me what Trump's got ready to go next is he's probably going to go in and take out a Chinese bank, or maybe a couple of them. So Kim Jong-un, in exchange for his bad faith offer, is going to get more pain, more economic suffering, more military presence that he doesn't like, more drills that he doesn't like. And so now he finds out. Now he can come back to the table and say, we tried that. Now let's make the offer that is likely to be accepted, which would be a complete dismantlement of their nuclear weapons program a complete end to the enrichment of uranium and other compounds associated with making nuclear weapons, and a complete turnover of their long and intermediate range ballistic missile program. And I think that when he comes back to the table, that will be the offer. Of course, the Trump administration has planned for unforeseen outcomes. He could do something stupid, and I think he might need to do something stupid now, like perhaps launch a missile and test a missile, maybe launch a missile over Japan, maybe issue a strong statement. It's unclear what he's going to do. It's hard to predict these things, but I think he's going to need to do something in response, and the U.S. will then use that as the impetus to launch the next round of sanctions and bank busting against China, who is enabling all of this chicanery on the part of the North Koreans.
Jacob, the US and South Korea had a joint military drill which offended the North Koreans and which also halted the peace talks that were going on. How badly do you think this would affect the peace talks initiative that was happening?
Well, I actually take a differing opinion from most of the experts on this that say it adversely affects the situation as far as peace talks go. The position that I take is different. I think that it's a strong move on the part of the United States and South Korea to demonstrate to the North Koreans that they are not on equal footing with the United States. This is not a negotiation among equals. This is a great offer that's being presented to North Korea, in which case they will have great protections, more economic independence, and more prosperity in their country. But it needs to be made clear to them, and it is being made clear to them, that they really don't have much choice in the matter. They have a choice between a wonderful, fantastic offer that will make their country rich and make them prosperous and preserve the regime of Kim Jong-un, or they have the alternative. And what's the alternative? Well, the alternative is the end of the Kim Jong-un regime, the toppling of their dictatorship, the military takeover of their country, and the forceful denuclearization of their country. And so they need to understand that this is a great deal, but there's a gun to their head. And if they choose not to make it, and if they choose to keep up the antics, it will be the end of their regime. So, while if this was a negotiation with China, okay, that would be a bad move to do military drills when you're trying to do that. Perhaps a negotiation over the South China Sea, let's say, or something of the sort. But it's not. This is a negotiation with a hermit kingdom that has no chance of standing up to the United States, has no meaningful economy, has no meaningful military might when compared with the United States. And that's why we can push them around a bit. And that's why, ultimately, we're going to get what we want. We spent more money on our military in the last 6 months than North Korea spent in the entire history of their country. There is a huge disparity between the power of the United States without our allies, but with our allies it's even more, and the power of North Korea, which stands alone, isolated, with some tacit support from China. So I think the military drills were good. I think it's important for Kim Jong-un to understand that if we decided to flip a switch, his regime is over. We don't even need to use nuclear force. We could take him out in about 3 days and have air superiority within about 90 minutes. So I think it's a good move, and I hope that the drills continue, and I hope that the sanctions continue, and I hope that they bring Kim Jong-un back to the table and show him that a deal needs to be made, and it needs to be made fast.
Jacob, let's get to the last question. How do you see the future between the North and South Korea? Do you think the Trump administration could bring them back to the table?
Oh, absolutely. I don't view this as a terminal disposition that's taking place here. I think that this is part of the negotiation. As I mentioned, the North Koreans needed to do this, right? If you want to go out and buy a house, and the house is listed for $500,000, and you show up with a suitcase with $500,000 in it, it's going to be pretty difficult for you to buy that house for $450,000. It's not going to happen. So what the North Koreans needed to do was shop around, find their price. They're surprisingly great negotiators, I will say. And that's exactly what they're doing. Now, the big unknown here is if China is pulling the strings behind the scenes and trying to sabotage this deal, which I think is possible. And if China is doing that, this is going to escalate to a great degree. Trump will take out Chinese banks. He will sanction Chinese bankers that are doing business with North Korea. And he will bring North Korea to their knees economically. But I don't think that that is entirely probable to happen. I think it's possible. I don't think it's probable. I think what's going to happen is there's going to be some antics over the next 10 days. We'll sanction them for a month or two, and then they'll come back to the table, and we'll get this thing back on track. I don't think that negotiations are ruled out from here. I don't think that it's impossible to negotiate. I think that this was a logical step, that somebody would walk away from the table, and I'm not terribly surprised by it. In fact, I've been sort of predicting it in a way on my Twitter feed and on my podcast, the Washington Reporter podcast. If you've been listening, you've sort of seen this be predicted for quite some time. So they're going to come back to the table, just a matter of time, and I'm not worried about it whatsoever.
Thanks so much, Jacob Wohl, for being on Tactical Talk. It was a pleasure having you.
It's always great to be here.
This was Jacob Wohl, a political commentator and also financer, the editor-in-chief of the Washington Reporter. We were discussing the North Korea problem. Until the next episode of Tactical Talk, this is Zain. Take care and goodbye.